A rich second-generation kid drove his Ferrari to his university. As he stepped down from the car, the girls went crazy over him, constantly calling him Shen Yuan and taking photos. They gossiped about how the rich kid from a well-off university family had just swapped his supercar for another. A beautiful woman stepped down from his car with him, causing the boys to go wild. Envy spread among them as they noticed her presence. They murmured about how Shen Yuan had barely entered college and was already involved with a second-year goddess from the flight attendant class. Discussions continued, speculating that being wealthy and attractive granted him first choice in picking a partner. Some even remarked that it wasn't just first choice, he practically had a monopoly, with many first-year goddesses rumored to be head over heels for him. As the two pairs walked, the girls watching them began to gossip. One girl couldn't help but compare herself, wondering if Zhou Wanning had a better body than her. She regretted hesitating for too long before making a move and questioned whether she still had a chance. Her friend reassured her, believing that opportunities were self-made and that she shouldn't let Zhou Wanning hold her back. Shen Yuan glanced back at them with a light smirk. However, behind that confident expression, his thoughts drifted to a bitter reality. His lavish, spendthrift lifestyle, once envied by everyone, had come to an end in his junior year of college. A disaster had struck, causing not only the downfall of his family's 3 travel agencies but also leaving them burdened with $1 million in debt. Shen Yuan casually suggested heading to the internet cafe for some games, but Lao Zhong responded with indifference, implying that they weren't that close. Another roommate chimed in, questioning whether Shen Yuan still saw himself as the wealthy kid who could command them at will. As their words sank in, Shen Yuan reflected on how his old fake friends had gradually drifted away, treating him like a plague. His situation felt hopeless. His parents and sister were now crammed into a rented apartment, and after being used to going out every day, he was forced to move back into a college dorm. The carefree days of the past were long gone, and even a decent life seemed uncertain. It was at this moment that everything truly hit him. Shen Yuan went to see his girlfriend, Zhou Wanning, only to be met with an unexpected farewell. She calmly stated that their relationship was over and that they should no longer contact each other. She wished for him to find someone who understood him better. Her words left Shen Yuan stunned, his face paling in shock. Shen Yuan says that 3 years together with Ting Ting made it hard to accept such a sudden ending. He struggled to grasp how easily she could walk away. Zhou Wanning, however, dismissed any notion of deep love between them, questioning the passion they once shared. Before leaving, she made one final remark: she no longer wanted to be called Ting, finding it outdated. With that, she made it clear that if they ever crossed paths again, it would be better if they acted as complete strangers. Shen Yuan listened to his girlfriend, realizing everything in that moment. With a sigh and a faint smile, he let her go, accepting that she no longer wanted him now that he had hit rock bottom. Zhou Wanning turned to leave, mentioning that a friend was coming to pick her up. Just as she was about to go, Shen Yuan stopped her. She hesitated, questioning what more he could possibly want. Without hesitation, he brought up the designer bags he had bought for her in the past, suggesting that since she wouldn't be using them anymore, she should return them to him. Anger flared in Zhou Wanning as she lashed out, calling him out for lacking dignity. She reminded him that she had stayed with him for 3 years, and all he had ever given her were a few crappy designer bags. Now, after their breakup, he had the audacity to ask for them back. Shen Yuan remained indifferent, stating that if she couldn't return the bags, he didn't even want the money. Before parting ways, he suggested reviving an old dream. Zhou Wanning bit her lip in frustration, anger boiling over as she snapped at him to go to hell. A man waiting in the car called out to her, telling her to get in, assuring her it wasn't worth getting angry. He then turned to Shen Yuan, casually asking where he was headed and if he needed a lift. Shen Yuan couldn't help but find it amusing. She had just told him that calling her Ting was outdated, yet when this man said it, she had no complaints. The irony made him scoff internally. Maintaining his composure, he politely declined, mentioning that his place was nearby. The man, unconvinced, reassured him that there was no rush. His only concern was whether this situation had hit Shen Yuan too hard. He insisted that it might be best to personally ensure Shen Yuan got home safely. Shen Yuan, feeling annoyed, thought to himself to finish him off. He thinks that if he didn't stand up for himself now, they would take him for a fool. Keeping his expression calm, he addressed the man, appreciating his concern but insisting that his place was just a few steps away. Then, turning to Zhou Wanning, he spoke with a composed tone, saying that she was a good girl and hoping the man would take good care of her in the future. His words caught her off guard, leaving her momentarily silent before she finally sat in the car. The man reassured him, confidently stating that Zhou Wanning was in good hands. Shen Yuan, however, responded with a subtle smirk, remarking that as men, they should always give women the best. He then casually advised the man to take note of some of her habits, mentioning her preference for a specific brand of condoms, her dislike for high-end stockings due to comfort issues, lastly nurse and cop uniforms are her favorites to wear in bed. Hearing this, the man's expression darkened with anger, though he dismissed Shen Yuan as nothing more than a bitter loser trying to provoke him. The man, visibly angered, stepped on the gas and drove away without another word. Shen Yuan watched the car disappear into the distance and let out a chuckle. He remarked to himself that he had just reached the best part. Reflecting for a moment, he admitted that perhaps Zhou Wanning had made the right choice after all. Looking up at the sky, he sighed, deciding that it was no longer his concern. He could only hope that her decision would lead her to a perfect life. Just then, an unexpected voice echoed in his mind. A system activated, confirming his thoughts. It announced that everyone should strive for the perfect life they deserved. A loading screen appeared in his vision, perfect life system initiating. The system notifies about Shen Yuan's current status. He is 21 years old, 182.0 centimeters tall, and weighs 72 kilograms. His wealth is 187 yuan, with a health level of 72 and an energy level of 75. He currently has no skill. Shen Yuan was taken aback upon hearing the system. The sudden activation felt unreal, he wasn't on the brink of death, so the idea of experiencing a hallucination made no sense. The system notification continued, declaring that the perfect life system had been fully activated. It explained that achieving a perfect life required not just financial stability but also admiration from the opposite sex. A time-limited task was initiated, instructing him to spend money on a suitably aged person of the opposite sex with a certain affinity level to earn their admiration. The system outlined the reward: any money spent would be returned, multiplied by the person's affinity. If their affinity increased during the process, the refund would be doubled. However, the spending had to be done using personal savings or cash, as borrowed money would not be counted. As Shen Yuan processed this information, he questioned whether he was truly experiencing a bizarre twist of fate or simply losing his mind. Just as the hallucination faded, a voice suddenly called out his name. Looking up, he saw a woman approaching him. Li Xiao expresses that a real man should act like one, treating a breakup as nothing significant. She believes she has seen it all and recalls a phrase men often like to hear in such moments: if it's over, it's over. The next one will be better. Shen Yuan looks at her in surprise. Over Professor Li's head, he notices the number 65 accompanied by a love symbol. A system notification confirms that Li Xiao's host affinity level is 65. The sight of numbers and notes floating above her head makes Shen Yuan realize that the perfect life system from earlier wasn't just a hallucination, it was real. Li Xiao, with a cheerful smile, encourages Shen Yuan to cheer up, showing no concern over his recent heartbreak. Shen Yuan reassured Li Xiao that he was fine, though internally, he recognized that having the perfect life system truly gave him an advantage. Li Xiao then brought up the scholarship opportunity she had previously mentioned, urging him to submit his documents soon, as it was one of the few ways she could assist him. However, Shen Yuan dismissed the idea, knowing that a few thousand yuan wouldn't make much of a difference against his family's overwhelming debt. He believed the scholarship should go to someone who truly needed it. Accepting his decision, Li Xiao didn't push further. Instead, with a concerned expression, she reminded him that he could always seek her out if he faced any difficulties, even in matters of love. With that, she took her leave, reassuring him once more that she was there if he ever needed help. Shen Yuan looks at Li Xiao and considers that she meets the criteria for the system's time-limited task. He wonders if completing the task would truly grant him a multiplied refund. Recalling the system's instructions, he remembers that any money spent on the designated person would be returned at 3 times the amount. With curiosity, he decides to test it out. With this thought in mind, Shen Yuan reaches for Li Xiao's hand and holds it. He expresses his gratitude for her concern and decides to buy her a milk tea. Li Xiao's face flushes as she hesitates, but in the end, she doesn't refuse. Shen Yuan soon returns with the milk tea and hands it to her. Li Xiao, still blushing, accepts it and expresses her thanks. Shen Yuan quickly analyzed his balance. Initially, he had 87 yuan. After spending 6 yuan on milk tea, his balance dropped to 81 yuan. However, upon receiving a system refund of 18 yuan, his total surged to 99 yuan. The multiplied refund was real. A realization struck him: as long as Professor Li's affinity remained above 60, he could keep spending on her and continuously receive system refunds. The implications were staggering. If he played his cards right, he could pay off his family's debts and even restore their wealth to greater heights. Excitement surged through him. The chance to return to his former lifestyle, or an even better one, was finally within reach. However, a limitation became clear. His current capital was a mere 99 yuan, which was far too little for significant progress. With this in mind, Shen Yuan determined his next priority, securing enough startup capital and finding the right girls to spend on to maximize his gains. Shen Yuan assessed his available funds. He had managed to secure 8,000 yuan in gold bars, 20,000 yuan in personal loans, and 21,585 yuan in business loans, adding to the 99 yuan he originally had. Altogether, his total capital amounted to 49,684 yuan. However, he knew that in Professor Li's eyes, he was just a struggling student from a bankrupt family. If he wanted her to accept an expensive gift, he needed to approach the situation carefully. Any misstep could raise suspicion or make her uncomfortable, which might affect her affinity level, and his system rewards. An hour later, Shen Yuan carefully removed the price tag from the luxury bag and discarded it in the trash. The bag, worth 39,800 yuan, was from the latest spring collection. He knew that if he presented it as an expensive gift, Li Xiao would likely refuse it, so he decided to pass it off as a knockoff to ensure she would accept it. Standing outside her door, Shen Yuan hesitated for a moment, wondering if Professor Li had a partner. Regardless, he knocked, waiting for a response. When Li Xiao opened the door, she seemed surprised to see him and asks what he is doing. The scent of freshly cooked food lingered in the air. He apologizes for bothering her and asks if she had been preparing a meal. Li Xiao asks if he needs anything. Shen Yuan expresses that Professor Li has taken good care of him during these 3 years of college. He used to think it was just normal, but today, he realizes how precious and warm that support is. He then presents the gift, insisting that she must accept it as a small token of his gratitude. Li Xiao hesitated as she looked at the bag, immediately sensing that it didn't seem cheap. Her instincts told her that accepting such a gift wasn't appropriate. She reminded herself that, as a professor, it was her duty to support students, and she treated everyone equally. There was no need for special gratitude. However, Shen Yuan reassured her, insisting that the bag was merely a knockoff worth 200 yuan. Given his financial situation, he reasoned that there was no way he could afford something expensive. For him, this wasn't about the price but about expressing his appreciation. Rejecting it would feel like rejecting his heartfelt gratitude, and he didn't want to leave the kindness unreturned. Faced with his sincerity, Li Xiao wavered. At this point, refusing would only hurt him further, and she didn't have the heart to do that. Li Xiao, after a moment of hesitation, decided to accept the gift but assured that she would return the favor on a holiday or Shen Yuan's birthday. Just then, a burning smell filled the air. Realizing her stir-fry was burning, she rushed back inside in a panic. Amidst the chaos, she casually invited Shen Yuan to stay for dinner, assuming he hadn't eaten yet. Shen Yuan weighed the situation. As long as her boyfriend, if she had one, didn't mind, he saw no issue in staying. More importantly, being close to her meant he could increase her affinity level, securing more system refunds in the process. At that moment, a system notification appeared. His construction bank account had just received 119,400 yuan, bringing his total balance to 120,200 yuan. Shen Yuan thinks that the money had successfully been transferred. The system was working exactly as expected. Shen Yuan analyzed the transaction in his mind. The 39,800 yuan bag had triggered a triple refund, amounting to 119,400 yuan. After deducting the cost, he had earned nearly 80,000 yuan in pure profit. Spending 80,000 yuan wasn't unfamiliar to him, but earning it on his own for the first time was an entirely new experience. A surge of excitement and accomplishment filled him. This was youth, this was victory. The feeling was incredible. Li Xiao, noticing his distraction, called him to sit down and eat, wondering what had him so deep in thought. Shen Yuan looks around and asks if it's just the two of them, wondering where her boyfriend is. Loosening the apron ties, Li Xiao reacts with surprise, clarifying that she doesn't have a boyfriend. She suggests letting go of any formalities between them. The response caught him off guard. As she loosened her apron, Shen Yuan instinctively moved to assist her, despite her insisting it wasn't necessary. Ignoring her protests, he swiftly stepped behind her, untying the apron himself. The sudden closeness surprises her, he is so close to her from the behind. As Shen Yuan continued to loosen the apron, he reassured Li Xiao that he would fix it in a moment. Just then, the door swung open, and Li Xiao's younger sister, Li Meng, arrived home. Seeing him standing so close behind her sister, she immediately yelled in shock, demanding to know what was happening. Shen Yuan, caught off guard, quickly stepped back, insisting that nothing inappropriate was going on. Li Xiao, unfazed, calmly asked why her sister was late and invited her to come and eat. She introduced Shen Yuan to Li Meng, holding her arm with a smile. However, Li Meng didn't share the same warmth, instead glaring at him angrily. Shen Yuan greeted her politely, but Li Meng, still looking irritated, simply muttered that she wasn't feeling well. Sensing the tension, Shen Yuan paused for a moment before deciding it was best to leave. He turned to Li Xiao and excused himself, mentioning that he had already eaten and needed to head back to college. With that, he left, saying they would see each other at school. As Shen Yuan left, Li Xiao couldn't help but find his words suspicious. Just a moment ago, it seemed like he was about to sit down for dinner, yet now he claimed he had already eaten. Meanwhile, Li Meng remained skeptical, voicing her doubts. She firmly believed that Shen Yuan had ulterior motives. However, Li Xiao dismissed her concerns, insisting that he was just a student. Li Meng, unconvinced, sarcastically pointed out how brazen it was for a student to pursue his professor. Li Xiao, her face slightly flushed, brushed off the remark and urged her sister to focus on eating instead. As Shen Yuan walked away, his mind drifted back to the system. He needed to decide who to spend on next. Professor Li, despite their connection, remained only a student-teacher relationship. Unlike Zhou Wanting, who had been driven purely by money, she was different. Just as he was deep in thought, someone bumped into him. Looking up, he immediately recognized the familiar face, his roommate, Lao Huang. Lao Huang, looking distressed, quickly explained his frustration. His longtime crush, Fang Minhui, had just gone to the movies with none other than Li Zanpeng, leaving him feeling utterly defeated. Shen Yuan's thoughts drifted to Fang Minhui, the well-known beauty of the 20th class of international trade, currently a sophomore. In Lao Huang's eyes, she was an unattainable goddess, someone he admired from afar but had never even spoken to. Observing Lao Huang's frustration, Shen Yuan remained unfazed, finding the situation rather ordinary. However, Lao Huang, noticing his reaction, felt uneasy, wondering if Shen Yuan was mocking him. Without entertaining the idea, Shen Yuan shifted Lao Huang's attention to the reality before them. Pointing toward Fang Minhui, he directed his roommate's gaze. Lao Huang's eyes immediately lit up, filled with admiration as he spotted her. Fang Minhui, unaware of their presence, walks with her friend, engaged in a lively conversation. Her laughter was soft yet captivating, and she casually sipped her coffee, completely at ease in her world. Lao Huang, still clinging to hope, reassured himself that Fang Minhui only went to the movies with Li Zanpeng and not anywhere more intimate. His excitement was palpable, convinced that he still had a chance with her. Shen Yuan, however, found Lao Huang's desperation pathetic. He couldn't understand why someone would lower their dignity just to chase after a girl. From his perspective, this kind of obsession rarely led to a happy ending. Just as he was about to brush the thought aside, something unexpected happened. His eyes widened in shock as he looked at Fang Minhui's head, where a glowing number 72 hovered, her affinity score toward him. The realization stunned him. This wasn't just any girl, her attachment potential was even higher than Professor Li's. The fact that she had such a high affinity for him meant she had principles and wasn't easily swayed by superficial charms. This changed everything. Min Hui's friend leaned in, speaking in a gossipy tone, bringing up Shen Yuan's recent breakup. Hearing his name, Min Hui's attention naturally shifted toward him, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Her friend, however, was clearly dissatisfied with Shen Yuan, her voice filled with disapproval. She recalled how, during basic training, she had encouraged Min Hui to interact with him, even treating him to drinks. Now, she seemed to regret it, criticizing him further. She pointed out that rich guys often had bad attitudes, which was understandable when they were wealthy. However, even after Shen Yuan's family went bankrupt, he remained just as arrogant, making his breakup seem inevitable. Min Hui simply responded with a neutral "oh," not revealing much emotion. Her friend continued, relieved that things never progressed between Min Hui and Shen Yuan. In her mind, if they had ended up together, it would have been 3 years of wasted youth. Shen Yuan realized that he had finally found someone who thought highly of him and could generate profits, but he couldn't understand now why her affinity towards him was dropping rapidly. After hearing Min Hui recall the past from her friend, her affinity level fell from 72 to 69. Seeing this, Shen Yuan knew he couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Turning to Lao Huang, he asked if it would bother him if he and Fang Minhui ended up together. Lao Huang, still convinced that Shen Yuan had no chance, dismissed the idea, reminding him that he was no longer a rich guy driving a Series 4. However, He added that as long as Fang Minhui wasn't with Li Zanpeng, he didn't care who she ended up with. Upon hearing this, Shen Yuan immediately ran toward Min Hui, acting without hesitation. He said he'd been hoping to hear that, and now he was going to give it a shot. Lao Huang, taken aback, stared in disbelief, questioning if Shen Yuan was actually serious. As Shen Yuan ran toward Min Hui, calling out her name, she instinctively turned back to look at him, her face flushing slightly. However, before she could respond, her friend quickly stepped in front of her, shielding her. Her friend, wary of Shen Yuan's intentions, questioned what he wanted with Min Hui. Ignoring the hostility, Shen Yuan calmly asked if she was free the next day, mentioning that he had already booked a table at Sing Sushi and inviting her to join him for dinner. Min Hui, caught off guard, internally processed his words, realizing that Shen Yuan was actually asking her to have dinner with him. However, before she could reply, her friend scoffed at the idea, pointing out that Sing Sushi was a high-end Japanese restaurant with a minimum spend of 1,000 yuan per person. She doubted whether Shen Yuan could even afford it. Scratching his head, Shen Yuan casually added that after dinner, he wanted her to accompany him for a walk and help him pick out a birthday gift for his sister. Leaving them with that thought, he simply told her to let him know by noon the next day. Then, Shen Yuan turned and walked off, telling her he'd meet her tomorrow, leaving Min Hui and her friend in stunned surprise. Min Hui had just watched a movie with Li Zanpeng and was now preparing to go to dinner with Shen Yuan. She asks if that's okay. Her friend saw nothing wrong with it, especially since the restaurant served top-notch Japanese food. While acknowledging Shen Yuan's arrogance, her friend pointed out that he was at least handsome, unlike Li Zanpeng, who only had his family's wealth. If Shen Yuan's family recovered financially, he could easily surpass Li Zanpeng. There was no harm in going, it was just dinner and a stroll, nothing serious. With a light-hearted remark about helping with a reply later, Min Hui eventually agreed. At the duck restaurant the next evening, Min Hui arrived well-dressed, her elegance matching the upscale atmosphere of the place. As she approached Shen Yuan, the waitress greeted him politely, presenting the menu for two and wishing them an enjoyable meal. Seated across from him, Min Hui hesitated before speaking, mentioning that she had heard about his family's financial struggles and that there was no need for him to spend so much. However, Shen Yuan reassured her, emphasizing that the Japanese cuisine here was exceptional and that the experience was well worth the expense. As he spoke, his gaze briefly lingered on Min Hui's curvy figure, and he found himself momentarily flustered. Her demeanor, her presence, everything about her tonight made his heart race. Reminding himself that it had only been 2 months since he last played the game of romance, he forced himself to stay composed. Breaking the momentary silence, Min Hui curiously asked about the sudden invitation, wondering if it was truly just to help him pick out a gift for his sister or if there was something more behind it. Shen Yuan calmly responded, mentioning that he had always wanted to invite her to dinner but never found the right moment. Min Hui's expression subtly shifted, a flicker of disappointment flashing in her eyes. Her affinity level instantly dropped from 69 to 66, reflecting her dissatisfaction. She remained silent, unable to respond to his words. Noticing the decline, Shen Yuan quickly reassessed the situation. His mind raced, if it wasn't the right thing to say? Clearing his throat, he decided to shift his approach. He reminded her of their past interactions, how during basic training, she would often buy him drinks and how they used to chat on WeChat at night. Min Hui's eyes widened slightly, taken aback by his words. She asked in surprise if he still remembered those moments. With a reassuring smile, Shen Yuan confirmed that he never forgot. Her affinity, which had just dropped, started to climb again, rising back from 66 to 69. Observing the shift, Shen Yuan reminded himself to stay composed. As he steadied his emotions, he noticed Min Hui's affinity continuing to increase, reaching 70. 40 minutes later, their meal came to an end. At the cash counter, the waitress calculated the total, informing Shen Yuan that the bill amounted to 2,920 yuan, but with his membership discount, the final amount was 2,774 yuan. Without hesitation, Shen Yuan scanned the QR code to make the payment, acknowledging the waitress with a polite nod. Min Hui observed the scene in silence, her thoughts drifting. The amount spent on this single meal nearly equaled her entire monthly budget of 3,000 yuan. In contrast, she recalled her recent outing with Li Zanpeng, who had arrogantly suggested eating at the school cafeteria first and dining out next time, despite his family's wealth. His stingy attitude stood in stark contrast to Shen Yuan's effortless generosity. This realization caused her affinity towards Shen Yuan to increase, rising from 71 to 73. As Shen Yuan checked his phone, a new message notification appeared. His bank account balance had increased, showing a deposit of 5,578 yuan, bringing his current total to 131,356 yuan. At the same time, the system issued a notification, reminding him of a time-limited task. The conditions remain the same: spend money on a person of the opposite sex with an affinity level above 60 and earn their admiration. The reward system was also unchanged, with triple refunds on the amount spent, and an additional doubling of the refund for every 3-point increase in affinity. As Shen Yuan looked at Manhwa, he analyzed the numbers. Her affinity had initially been 72. Now, it had climbed to 76. The realization struck him: earning 10,000 yuan from just a single meal was an exhilarating feeling. Meanwhile, Manhwa's affinity continued to rise, increasing from 73 to 76. As Manhwa glanced at Shen Yuan, a thought crossed her mind: the more she looked at him, the more appealing he seemed. Maybe it was the power of money. With a bright smile, she held his hand and reminded him about their next stop, the mall, to pick out a gift for his sister. Upon arriving at the shopping mall, an unexpected encounter took place. Zhou Wanning's boyfriend noticed Shen Yuan first, his expression immediately darkening. With a displeased tone, he pointed out Shen Yuan's presence. Zhou Wanning herself seemed equally surprised, her thoughts swirling as she recognized him. Just yesterday, he had dumped her, and yet, today, he was already out with someone new? Her boyfriend's anger grew as he took in the scene before him. A poor student like Shen Yuan, who was supposedly drowning in debt, had the audacity to spend money in a place like this. An increasing sense of frustration filled him. He had spent a fortune on luxury bags just to win over Zhou Wanning, yet Shen Yuan, despite his financial situation, still had beautiful women by his side? The thought was utterly infuriating. Shen Yuan suggests checking out other stores first, but Manhwa remains silent, giving no response. Zhou Wanning's boyfriend comments that since they are already there, they might as well go in and take a look. After all, window shopping doesn't cost anything. Then, Zhou Wanning asks what Shen Yuan doing here and who is the girl with him. Shen Yuan acknowledges the coincidence and explains that he is shopping for a gift for his sister. Zhou Wanning's boyfriend scoffs, suggesting that if he's looking for gifts, he should head to the toy wholesale market instead. He questions whether Shen Yuan can even afford to shop there. Zhou Wanning steps in front of Manhwa, addressing her directly. Despite not knowing her, she warns her not to be fooled by Shen Yuan. Shen Yuan moves protectively in front of Manhwa, shielding her from Zhou Wanning words. He questions Zhou Wanning's words, asking what she means by fooled and whether she is implying that he deceives someone, perhaps even her. Zhou Wanning's boyfriend interjects, advising Shen Yuan not to speak to Wanning in such a manner. He remarks that a man should have class and reminds Shen Yuan that Wanning is his ex. Bringing up Shen Yuan's family situation, he points out that everyone knows about their bankruptcy and debt. He reassures Shen Yuan that there is no need to pretend to be rich, no one is mocking him for it. Shen Yuan couldn't help but feel disgusted by the pair in front of him. Their arrogance and condescension made it clear, they were truly made for each other. Just then, the system sent a notification, presenting a new time-limited task. A perfect life, it stated, shouldn't be looked down upon by others. The objective was to spend on someone of the opposite sex with an affinity level over 60 while simultaneously increasing the negative emotions of others. The reward was enticing: if others' negative emotions toward him increased, for every -5 points rise, the amount spent on the opposite sex would be doubled. Additionally, this task could be combined with the existing refund mechanism for spending. The system displayed the current affinity levels. Zhou Wanning's boyfriend's negative affinity toward Shen Yuan stood at -30, while Zhou Wanning's was even lower at -35. The opportunity was clear. If he played this right, not only could he maximize his profits, but he could also thoroughly frustrate the two people who looked down on him. Shen Yuan initially intended to let things slide, sparing them from public embarrassment. However, since they insisted on interfering, and now that the system had assigned him a task, there was no longer any reason to hold back. Without hesitation, he took Manhwa's hand and confidently led her forward, deciding to make the most of the situation. At the store's cash reception, the sales staff quickly took notice. One of the saleswomen, recognizing him as a former regular customer, suggested that her colleague handle him. However, the second saleswoman hesitated, dismissing the idea. Serving a once wealthy customer who had since gone bankrupt seemed pointless. Recalling a previous incident where a so-called socialite had wasted her time by sampling items without making a purchase, she was reluctant to go through the same hassle again. The first saleswoman, unwilling to take no for an answer, pressured her colleague, leaving her no choice but to approach Shen Yuan and Manhwa. Zhou Wanning, having made her decision, turned to brother Jun and asked him to pay. The first saleswoman, eager to assist, responded enthusiastically, assuring her that the payment would be processed right away. Meanwhile, the second saleswoman voiced her frustration, internally complaining about how the high-quality customers who made consistent purchases were always snatched by the first saleswoman, while she was left to deal with those who merely browsed without buying anything. Another saleswoman joined in, praising Jo Wonning's taste, remarking that the selected accessories perfectly matched her style, unlike certain customers who lacked any sense of aesthetics. With a smug laugh, she subtly directed her comment at Shen Yuan and Min Hui. The first saleswoman continued to flatter Jo Wonning, pointing out how well the accessories complemented the bag she had chosen. Opening a display case, she presented a collection of bear keychains, suggesting they would be a nice addition. However, she made sure to mention that the total cost of everything would amount to approximately 100,000 yuan. Shen Yuan reassured Min Hui not to worry about saving money for him. Min Hui, considering the options, pointed out a bag she found particularly pretty and another with a youthful design that she believed Shen Yuan's sister would love. The second saleswoman, showing little interest, casually mentioned that the combined cost of both bags exceeded 50,000 yuan, emphasizing how expensive they were. Meanwhile, Jo Wonning's boyfriend was caught in his own thoughts, stunned by the extravagant spending. He had initially assumed that a 20,000 yuan bag would suffice, but Jo Wonning was now aiming for a full set worth 100,000 yuan. Jo Wonning, whispering to him, urged him to pay up, reminding him that Shen Yuan was watching. She insisted that as her boyfriend, he needed to display his financial strength in front of Shen Yuan. However, reality struck as he realized that proving himself with 100,000 yuan was impossible. His current card balance wouldn't even come close. Shen Yuan decisively informed the saleswoman that he wanted both bags, along with the accessories that had been recommended earlier. His words sent a wave of shock through Jo Wonning and her boyfriend, who were completely taken aback by his sudden display of wealth. Even Min Hui, standing beside him, looked at him in surprise. The second saleswoman, equally stunned, struggled to process the situation. Just moments ago, she had assumed he was broke, yet now he was effortlessly purchasing everything, including the expensive accessories. After quickly calculating, she informed him that the total for both bags and the accessories amounted to 131,000 yuan. Shen Yuan found the timing almost amusing. His recent refund from the system had given him exactly that amount. Without hesitation, he handed over his ATM card for payment. Acknowledging his purchase, the saleswoman promptly confirmed the transaction and hurried off to retrieve the items. The second saleswoman, overwhelmed with emotion, internally celebrated her unexpected stroke of luck. Initially, she had assumed serving Shen Yuan would be a waste of time, but he had not only purchased 2 luxury bags but had also added a set of accessories. With a single transaction exceeding 130,000 yuan, she realized that Shen Yuan was even more generous and carefree than he had been before. Jo Wonning, unable to contain her frustration, angrily demanded answers from Shen Yuan. She had believed he was bankrupt, so the sight of him spending so lavishly was infuriating. Her boyfriend, equally stunned, questioned whether he had taken out a loan to afford such an extravagant purchase. Remaining unfazed, Shen Yuan simply dismissed their concerns, making it clear he had no interest in explaining himself. Turning the situation back on them, he pointed out that since they weren't struggling financially either, it should be no problem for Jo Wonning's boyfriend to buy her another bag. After all, it was only a little over 20,000 yuan, an insignificant amount for someone as financially capable as him. Jo Wonning's boyfriend's expression darkened as he glared at Shen Yuan, anger flashing in his eyes. Shen Yuan, maintaining his composed demeanor, remarked that a man should not only have class but also be generous. He pointed out that the luxury car Jo Wonning's boyfriend owned must have cost at least 600,000 to 700,000 yuan, implying that spending a bit more on his girlfriend shouldn't be an issue. Jo Wonning, eager to maintain her pride, urged her boyfriend to prove himself and not let Shen Yuan undermine him. However, internally, her boyfriend panicked. The expensive car had actually been bought on a loan, a fact he couldn't afford to reveal to Jo Wonning. Feigning urgency, he suddenly pretended to receive an important call. Using it as an excuse, he stepped aside, acting as if he were discussing a major business deal. Jo Wonning says that how he could do that. His voice carried an air of authority as he fabricated a conversation, mentioning million yuan projects and emphasizing his supposed influence over financial decisions. Jo Wonning, however, was left frustrated and disappointed, watching as her boyfriend avoided the confrontation. Jo Wonning gazed at Shen Yuan, her expression unreadable as she silently wished him well. Shen Yuan, meanwhile, checked the system notifications, wondering if the negative emotion points had reached the required threshold. The system displayed updated affinity levels. Joe Wunning's boyfriend's attitude toward him had worsened, negativity increased to -35, while Joe Wunning's had plummeted to -45. Realizing that the task had been successfully completed, Shen Yuan decided there was no need to engage with him any further. His focus shifted back to Manhwa. Handing her the bags and the keychain he had just purchased, he insisted that they were for her. Manhwa hesitated, her expression filled with surprise and reluctance. The price of the items was undeniably high, and she wasn't comfortable accepting such an expensive gift. However, Shen Yuan reassured her, dismissing it as nothing more than a simple bag. He acknowledged the unpleasant situation she had endured and framed the gift as an apology for the unnecessary trouble she had to face. After a brief moment of contemplation, Manhwa finally accepted his gesture. With a soft smile, she thanked Shen Yuan, expressing her gratitude as she carefully took the bag from him. Shen Yuan smiled, shaking his head as he pushed the bags toward Manhwa once more. He told her not to thank him too soon because everything he had purchased was for her. Manhwa hesitated, reminding him that he had originally mentioned buying the gifts for his sister. Without hesitation, Shen Yuan admitted that he wasn't sure if his sister would even like them. However, he was certain that Manhwa would. Internally, he knew that if he had actually bought the bags for Shen Xuan, she would have scolded him for wasting money and immediately informed their parents. The truth was, these two bags had always been intended for Manhwa from the start. He just needed her to accept them so he could secure his refund. Manhwa, torn between her feelings and the overwhelming generosity, hesitated again. One bag had already felt like too much, and now he was insisting on giving her the entire set. A small worry crept into her mind. Would this make her seem like a gold digger? The thought unsettled her. Blushing, she attempted to return the bags, insisting that they were far too expensive for her to accept. Before she could pull away, Shen Yuan gently grasped her hands, preventing her from refusing outright. Shen Yuan smiled reassuringly, telling Manhwa not to worry. He assured her that this was just the beginning and that they had plenty of time ahead. If she didn't accept the gifts, he would feel bad. As soon as Manhwa finally accepted them, the system congratulated Shen Yuan on successfully completing the limited time task. The task had generated 15 negative emotion points, which tripled the amount he had spent. Additionally, since it was combined with the refund for expenses on the opposite sex, the total refund multiplied 6 times. His phone buzzed with a notification from his bank. His construction bank account had just received a deposit of 786,000 yuan, bringing his current balance to 786,356 yuan. Shen Yuan looked at Manhwa, still holding her hands, and thought about how she had now become his money tree. He needed to take good care of her and ensure her affinity level didn't drop as it had before. Manhwa's face flushed with a soft blush as she sensed his gaze. As the moment lingered, Shen Yuan gently suggested they head back to school since it was getting late. Though he felt an urge to take things further, he reminded himself that these things shouldn't be forced, it was better to let them flow naturally. Manhwa, still blushing, glanced at Shen Yuan and compared him to Li Zanpang. Unlike Zanpang, who only thought about money and control, Shen Yuan hadn't even mentioned going to a hotel. If he had, she'd really like to go with him. That thought alone made her feel more drawn to him. Later, at the boys' dormitory, a conversation unfolds. One boy remarks that Shen Yuan is different from Li Zanpang. He never brought up the idea of going to a hotel, though the thought had crossed his mind. Another boy chimes in, admitting that they hadn't expected Li Zanpang to take the lead in this situation. As Shen Yuan walked into the dormitory, a boy wearing glasses suddenly suggested that this achievement called for a celebration. He insisted that Li Zanpang should treat everyone to dinner, and not at some cheap place either. Li Zanpang, seizing the opportunity, chimed in loudly, proposing they invite the entire class and throw a huge party. His voice carried through the corridor, making sure Shen Yuan could hear every word. Despite the provocation, Shen Yuan didn't react. Ignoring them completely, he continued on his way to his dormitory room. Inside, his roommate was already fuming. He mentioned how Li Zanpang, after just watching a movie with the coarse flower, was making sure the whole school knew about it. It was obvious that this move was aimed at them, especially the room members of 503. Shen Yuan, however, remained unfazed. With a calm expression, he simply remarked that Li Zanpang's glory days were numbered. Fang Manhwa would never stay with him. Shen Yuan's roommate scoffed, reminding him not to be so confident. He pointed out that Fang Manhwa had gone to the movies with Li Zanpang just last night. Who knew if they had done more than that? Adding to the doubt, he mentioned that Manhwa hadn't even agreed to go out with Shen Yuan earlier, which could mean she was truly with Li Zanpang. Hearing this, Shen Yuan fell silent. A mix of emotions ran through him, but instead of dwelling on it, he checked his bank balance. Seeing the large sum of money now sitting in his account, he thought that perhaps it was time to visit home. The next day, at his family house, Shen Yuan was greeted by his uncle, Shen Yaod, who welcomed him. Shen Yuan greeted him in return before his father, in a more serious tone, acknowledged his presence. However, he told him to wait inside, as the adults were in the middle of a discussion. There was something he needed to talk about with his uncle first. Shen Yuan's father tried to reason with his brother, explaining that he understood the urgency but needed a little more time. A payment for a batch of goods was expected soon, and once received, he would repay a portion of the debt. However, Shen Yaod, his uncle, was firm. Partial repayment wouldn't be enough. He needed the full amount in the coming days to cover his own expenses. Hearing this, Shen Yuan's mother grew frustrated. She reminded Shen Yao that when he had needed money to open a car wash, they had lent him 300,000 yuan without pressuring him for repayment. But now, after borrowing 200,000 yuan from them, he kept pressing them repeatedly. She questioned what that was supposed to mean. Shen Yuan's father tried to calm the situation, telling his wife to stop talking. He acknowledged that his brother had his own difficulties. However, Shen Yuan's mother wasn't convinced. She revealed that she had spoken to Shen Yaod's wife and knew that there were no urgent expenses on his side at the moment. Shen Yaod remained firm, stating that paying off debts was only natural. He reminded them that they were lucky to be family and able to talk calmly. If they were strangers, they would have experienced aggressive debt collection. Shen Yuan's mother was furious at his words, exclaiming how ungrateful the Shen family was. She questioned what the point of their kindness had been if this was the response they received. Shen Yuan's father tried to settle the argument, telling her to stop saying such things. He suggested that if they still had any gold jewelry, they should sell it to gather some money, assuring her that they could buy more in the future. Frustrated, Shen Yuan's mother scoffed at the idea, insisting that their priority should be paying off the family debts before thinking about anything else. At that moment, the system notified Shen Yuan of a new task, ensuring a perfect life shouldn't be burdened by debt. The time-limited task required him to pay off either his family's or his own debts. The reward would be double the amount paid. Additionally, if he paid 200,000 yuan, he would receive 1 million yuan exclusively for car expenses. Shen Yuan saw the task notification and thought it had come at the perfect time. Even without it, he had already planned to help ease his family's financial burden today. Shen Yuan's mother handed over a small pouch containing the jewelry his parents had given him over the years, assuring them that no matter how difficult things had been, she had never sold them. The pieces were worth only a few thousand yuan, but she wanted them to use them now. His mother examined the pouch and noted that 2 gold rings were missing, likely lost during their recent move. Shen Yuan, however, knew the truth. Back in his first year of college, when he couldn't afford to buy Joe wanting a luxury bag, he had secretly taken and sold those rings. Remembering his past actions, he felt a deep sense of regret, how foolish and selfish he had been back then. Determined to make things right, Shen Yuan told his parents that he had money now. His father dismissed it as a joke, while his mother, seeing the dire state of their household finances, urged him not to be reckless. She suggested he use whatever money he had to top up his cafeteria card instead, rather than making foolish decisions. Shen Yuan reassured his parents that he truly had money, pointing out the sound of the transfer notification. His mother and father were stunned when they saw the amount, 200,000 yuan. His father, still in disbelief, immediately questioned where the money had come from. Shen Yuan explained that back when he received a good allowance, he had invested it in cryptocurrencies with a friend. The friend had advised him to leave the investment untouched due to its high growth potential, and he had only recently cashed it out. Internally, Shen Yuan thought that this explanation was convincing enough. Given his past allowance, it was a believable reason for suddenly having so much money. His mother, overwhelmed with relief, expressed her amazement, calling him their savior. His father, now reassured, decided that the first priority would be paying off their debt and finally getting rid of that lingering burden. With the debt fully repaid, Shen Yuan's father announced to Shen Yao that their financial obligation was settled. His mother, no longer holding back, bluntly told Yao that since he had received his money, he should leave. She made it clear that it would be best if their families had minimal contact in the future. Shen Yao had attempted to say something, but she cut him off, firmly ordering him out. With no choice, he was forced to leave. As he walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief. He had assumed that with his cousin's 100 million debt, he thought the financial situation was deteriorating over time, which was why he had come to collect his debt as soon as possible. Yet, to his shock, the full amount was paid off so quickly. This raised questions in his mind, whether his cousin's family had a new source of income or if they were on the path to prosperity once again. Shen Yao couldn't help but regret his actions. The realization hit him, after what he had done today, how could he maintain any relationship with his cousin's family in the future? He questioned why he had even come in the first place. Meanwhile, the system notified Shen Yuan that he had successfully completed the first debt payment objective. True to its word, the system transferred the reward. His construction bank account received 400,000 yuan, increasing his balance to 1,186,356 yuan. Shortly after, another deposit of 1 million yuan was added, bringing his total balance to 2,186,356 yuan. Shen Yuan processed the numbers in his mind. Excluding the 1 million yuan allocated for purchasing a car, his net worth had already surpassed 1 million yuan. He hadn't expected that a simple trip home would not only relieve his parents of their financial burden but also bring him such an enormous reward. Shen Yuan understood that completely settling the family's debts was still a long journey ahead. Even if he gave his father the entire million he had just received, it wouldn't be enough. The smarter move was to use this capital to generate even more money. After calculating, he decided that the most he could afford to give his father at the moment was 200,000 yuan without affecting his financial plans. He then mentioned to his father that he still had a portion of money left unwithdrawn, around 200,000 yuan, and asked if it was needed urgently. His mother, after considering their situation, said that the remaining debts weren't as pressing, so they could hold on to it for now. However, his father suddenly changed his mind and asked for 50,000 yuan instead. Shen Yuan found the situation amusing. It felt just like when he used to ask his father for money in the past. The way his father acted now reminded him exactly of his younger self. Genetics truly was an interesting thing. Shen Yuan saw Li Xiao and greeted her, noting that she had returned. Li Xiao mentioned that there were no classes that afternoon. Shen Yuan, recalling that she had invited him to dinner previously, decided to return the favor and asked if she was free that evening. However, from behind Li Xiao, Shen Yuan suddenly felt a sharp, hostile gaze directed at him. Turning slightly, he saw Li Meng, Li Xiao's sister, staring at him with an intensity that felt almost murderous. Taken aback, Shen Yuan quickly reassessed the situation. He thought to himself that dealing with Li Meng was like facing his worst nemesis, definitely not someone he wanted to provoke. Quickly changing his mind, Shen Yuan decided it was best to leave. He hastily told Li Xiao that he had just remembered something important at school and wouldn't be free for dinner after all. Without waiting for a response, he turned and left, eager to escape the uncomfortable situation. Li Meng expresses her doubts, insisting that she had warned about the guy's bad intentions. Li Xiao, however, remains uncertain. She considers that it might just be a simple dinner, and even if there were other motives involved, she wouldn't be able to accept them. Meanwhile, Shen Yuan finds himself lost in thought. He recalls the time when he drove with the AC on, enjoying the comfort and relaxation while caressing Zhou Wanning. Just remembering it brings a sense of ease. Then, a realization strikes him: he now has a special fund designated for buying a car. Not using it would almost feel like disrespecting the great system. With that thought, he quickly sends a message to Manhwa, asking if she's free that afternoon to accompany him in checking out some cars. Manhwa responds shortly after, confirming that she is free since she has no classes that afternoon. Back in Manhwa's dormitory, her friend teases her about the progress in her relationship. She points out that Manhwa and Shen Yuan are already picking out a car together and playfully asks if they'll even be coming back to the dorm tonight. Blushing, Manhwa quickly dismisses the idea, insisting that they're not together yet. Her friend continues to joke, calling Manhwa lucky for finding a guy who is both rich and handsome. Soon, she adds, it will be Shen Yuan's turn. Her friend touching Manhwa's breast, she then complains about how troublesome it all is. 1 hour later, at the 4S dealership, a salesman approaches, greeting them and asking which model they're interested in. However, upon seeing Manhwa, he suddenly hesitates, his face slightly flushed. With surprise, he asks why she is there. Manhwa recognizes him instantly. It's Senior Qin Yang, the one who had chased after her back in high school. Seeing him here, she wonders how they ended up crossing paths again. Qin Yang looks at Manhwa and immediately questions her about Shen Yuan's identity. Shen Yuan calmly introduces himself as her classmate. Qin Yang acknowledges this with a neutral expression before shifting back into his professional role. He asks if they are here to look at cars and inquires about their preferred model. Shen Yuan responds that they want to see the M9. Qin Yang gestures toward the display car, informing them that they are welcome to take a look and even sit inside if they'd like. However, Internally, Qin Yang is filled with annoyance. He knows that even the most basic M9 costs 500,000 yuan, and with all the additional fees, it surpasses 600,000. Looking at Shen Yuan's plain attire, he scoffs internally, if this guy doesn't have money, why bring a girl to a dealership to show off? His gaze shifts to Manhwa, and a lustful glint appears in his eyes. She is as stunning as ever, just like back in high school when he considered her his goddess. Unlike before, though, he sees himself as a changed man. Now an elite salesman at this dealership, he earns over 10,000 yuan a month and drives a 200,000 yuan Accord. In his mind, he believes that modern women are practical. Someone like him, with stability and success, would naturally be their top choice. Qin Yang approaches Manhwa, says that it's been a long time and invites her to catch up if she is free tonight. Manhwa declines, mentioning she isn't free tonight as she has other plans. Before the conversation can continue, Shen Yuan interrupts, requesting a test drive. Qin Yang, feeling annoyed, internally complains about the interference, questioning why Shen Yuan is interrupting when he is trying to talk to Manhwa. He also wonders why Shen Yuan wants a test drive if he has no intention of buying the car, considering it a waste of time. Despite his frustration, Qin Yang informs Shen Yuan that the test car is unavailable as the boss took it for the day. Shen Yuan, unfazed, recalls spotting the M9 at the entrance before coming in. Realizing the excuse, he decides to escalate the matter and requests another salesperson from the receptionist to arrange the test drive. Shortly after, a beautiful woman with an attractive figure arrives. She introduces herself as Chen Na, a sales consultant, and offers assistance. Shen Yuan, remaining silent, simply looks at her. A salesman nearby questions Qin Yang about handing over his client, wondering why he allowed Chen Na to take over. Qin Yang, uninterested in dealing with the situation, dismisses the concern, stating that he has no time to waste on a student claiming he wants to buy an M9 and test drive it, something he finds completely absurd. The other salesman, however, warns him that if the deal goes through, he might regret it later. Qin Yang remains unconvinced, scoffing at the idea. To him, Shen Yuan is just another broke guy trying to impress a beautiful girl by pretending to be wealthy, something he believes he has seen countless times before. Meanwhile, Chen Na takes Shen Yuan for the test drive, explaining the model's advanced features, including its smart driving capabilities and 192-line laser radar, which enables full autonomous driving. Shen Yuan listens attentively, noting her professionalism. At the same time, he acknowledges that her looks and figure rival Manhwa's. However, in the auto industry, he recalls reading online about saleswomen going to great lengths to close deals with male clients, doing whatever it takes to meet their targets. Chen Na inquires about Shen Yuan's familiarity with the model's specifications and his approximate budget. Without hesitation, Shen Yuan asks if any units are available, stating his intent to take the car home that very day. This response catches Chen Na off guard. Typically, clients interested in purchasing a car would visit multiple times before making a decision. Yet, after just a single test drive and without even asking for the price, Shen Yuan is ready to buy. The situation seems unusual, making her wonder why Qin Yang had so easily given up on him if he was truly a serious buyer. After a brief pause, Chen Na informs him that the store currently has no available units. However, she mentions that another branch has one due to a cancelled order caused by financial issues. If needed, the vehicle can be transferred to the dealership within a week. Shen Yuan, without hesitation, confirms his decision and states that he will place the order immediately. Chen Na is surprised by Shen Yuan's decisiveness, spending over 600,000 yuan without hesitation. She wonders if he is one of those rare angel clients or if he has other motives. She informs Shen Yuan that he can take a seat in the store and only needs to pay a 50,000 yuan deposit while she fetches the contract. Meanwhile, Qin Yang checks in with Chen Na about the client's intentions. When she confirms that Shen Yuan bought the car, the salesman is shocked at how quickly the deal was made. Qin Yang, however, remains skeptical, believing that Shen Yuan is merely showing off. He predicts that when it's time to make the actual payment, Shen Yuan will come up with excuses and disappear, just like many others before him. The salesman agrees, noting that in all his years of selling cars, he has never encountered a buyer so determined. Chen Na clarifies that Shen Yuan not only bought the car but also intends to pay in cash. The salesman, shocked, exclaims at the missed opportunity, calling it a huge waste. Qin Yang, realizing his mistake, remains silent, feeling embarrassed. Chen Na then turns to Shen Yuan, offering her assistance if he ever needs help in the future. She also asks if he needs a ride. However, Manhwa declines, stating that they will take a taxi instead. As Chen Na watches them, She realizes that in her eagerness to serve the client, she may have unintentionally annoyed his girlfriend. Aware of the situation, she decides not to accompany them any further. As they leave, Shen Yuan suggests having a meal, but Min Hui remains silent. Sensing something is off, he questions whether she is upset or feeling jealous. Min Hui denies it, but her expression tells a different story. Shen Yuan reassures her that his interaction with Chen Na was purely professional, a simple salesperson-client relationship. However, Min Hui remains unconvinced, recalling how he had been chatting happily with Chen Na, scrolling through her moments, and spending so much time with her. Shen Yuan explains that checking someone's moments is just a habit whenever he adds a new contact. Min Hui, still displeased, tells him not to do it next time. Deep down, Min Hui begins to question her own emotions. Although she and Shen Yuan are not in a relationship yet, she finds herself feeling jealous. His extravagant spending naturally draws the attention of other women, making her feel uneasy. Determined, she resolves to find a way to keep Shen Yuan by her side. Yes, she must lock him down. Shen Yuan assures Min Hui that it won't happen again and suggests they eat first before heading to the mall to pick out a gift. However, in his mind, he has no intention of stopping. He isn't that naive. Min Hui hesitates, reminding him that he already bought her 2 bags yesterday. While she appreciates his gestures, she worries that his continuous spending might give the wrong impression. She doesn't want him to think she's being too materialistic. Shen Yuan dismisses her concerns, saying that it's normal for girls to own multiple bags. With 7 days in a week, they can't all be the same. Internally, he sees things differently. For him, spending on girls comes with benefits. His purchases earn him a triple refund. The more he buys, the more he profits, making every expense a strategic move. At the restaurant, Shen Yuan casually asks Min Hui whether she would like a cold or hot drink. Min Hui pauses, overanalyzing his question. She wonders if he is trying to indirectly figure out whether she is on her period. To her, it seems like a subtle way of gauging whether he can be intimate with her tonight. Deciding to test the waters, she chooses a cold drink. Shen Yuan, blushing upon realizing her interpretation, notices the expression on Min Hui's face and is taken aback. He internally questions where her thoughts have wandered. However, his own mind drifts elsewhere. His last time with Zhou Wanning was 2 months ago, and with all the savings he has accumulated, he feels the urge to spend. Amused by the situation, he decides to play along, making the misunderstanding even more intense. 3 hours later, Shen Yuan buys several luxury items for Min Hui, a watch costing 12,800 yuan, a bracelet for 20,800 yuan, and a bag for 50,500 yuan. Min Hui, blushing, feels overwhelmed by his generosity. In just one night, he has spent over 80,000 yuan on her, and in the past 2 days, nearly 140,000 yuan. His kindness and lavish spending leave her feeling both touched and a little flustered. Meanwhile, a system notification confirms that his construction bank account has received 252,000 yuan, bringing his current balance to 2,254,256 yuan. Shen Yuan mentally notes the effectiveness of the system's double refund. The 50,000 yuan he gave to his dad and the 50,000 yuan deposit for the car were immediately reimbursed. Even though his total balance includes the car's final payment, after deducting nearly 600,000 yuan, he still has over 1.6 million yuan left to spend. Turning to Min Hui, Shen Yuan casually suggests not returning to the dorm tonight. Min Hui remains silent, her face turning red, but a soft smile appears as she anticipates their time alone together. Half an hour later, in room 808 of the Grand Magnate Hotel, Shen Yuan takes a shower. Min Hui sits in thought, recalling that Chen Ling had asked why she hadn't returned to the dorm yet. Uncertain about how to respond, she wonders if she should simply say she's with Shen Yuan, feeling embarrassed at the thought. As Shen Yuan steps out of the shower, he looks at her and asks if she's ready. Blushing, Min Hui lowers her gaze. She thinks about how much he has given her and then sends a message to her friend, informing her that she won't be back that night and asking her to say she went to a relative's house if anyone asks. Shen Yuan leans in, pressing soft kisses against her neck. Min Hui hesitates, mentioning that she still hasn't showered, but he reassures her, saying it doesn't matter, he likes her scent. His touch lingers, exploring every inch of her, as she reacts to him, calling out his name. As he unzips her dress, he whispers his appreciation for her scent once again. Nervous, Min Hui asks him to be gentle, revealing that it's her first time. Shen Yuan kisses her lips as they continue their romantic night. And we know afterwards. Half an hour later, after experiencing her first time, Min Hui rests in Shen Yuan's arms, blushing as she reflects on how it wasn't as frightening as Chen Ling had described. Shen Yuan, holding her close, feels surprised at how well she handled it. Though satisfied, he realizes how exhausted he is, thinking that his lack of exercise over the past 2 months has left him weaker than expected. Manhwa slowly moves, climbing onto him and pressing soft kisses against his chest. Looking up at him, she whispers her desire to do it again. Shen Yuan, caught off guard, hesitates, asking if she can wait until he recovers a little more. But Manhwa, her gaze filled with longing, blushes and insists that she wants to do it now. Early the next morning, just as Shen Yuan returns to the dorm, he reflects on another benefit of the system: refunds for paying off debts. With outstanding balances across various loan apps and credit cards totaling 52,000 yuan, he decides to clear them first. Next, he turns his attention to the 100,000 yuan he owes Li Yuhong, a debt from when his family went bankrupt. Unlike others who distanced themselves from him during tough times, Li Yuhong had helped him without hesitation. Shortly after making the payments, Shen Yuan receives notifications from his construction bank account. First, a deposit of 104,000 yuan appears, bringing his balance to 2,306,256 yuan. Then, another 200,000 yuan arrives, increasing his total to 2,508,256 yuan. Thinking back, Shen Yuan realizes how quickly people had abandoned him when he lost everything. Yet, Li Yuhong had stood by him, proving to be a true friend. Shen Yuan's roommate confronts him the moment he returns, demanding to know where he was last night. He also asks if Shen Yuan has checked the class group messages, informing him about a class dinner happening that evening. The roommate then complains about Li Zhanpeng, who recently bought a car. He suspects that Li Zhanpeng was the one who convinced the class monitor to organize the dinner, likely just to show off. Annoyed, he expresses his frustration, saying that attending would mean sitting through Li Zhanpeng's personal show, which he finds disgusting. However, skipping the dinner would mean wasting the 200 yuan class fee. Shen Yuan, amused, remarks that Li Zhanpeng is quite entertaining when he flaunts his wealth. However, he decides not to attend, telling his roommate to go without him. Shen Yuan receives a message from his friend Li Yuhong, inviting him to dinner and drinks, urging him to relax since it has been a long time since they last met. Just then, the system notifies him of a new task, this time, business-related. The task highlights that a perfect life requires not only admiration from the opposite sex but also a solid financial foundation. As part of the challenge, the system grants him 1 million yuan exclusively for investments, with a 1-week deadline to allocate the entire amount. The reward for completing the task is that all income from any commercial activity will be doubled. Shen Yuan is thrilled. This task arrives at the perfect moment, aligning with his thoughts on how to manage the growing balance in his account. He realizes that while spending freely is enjoyable, he needs a legitimate source of income to sustain his wealth. As he processes the information, his roommate watches him with a questioning expression, sensing that something is up. Shen Yuan considers investing in Li Yuhong's bar, which is currently under renovation. It seems like a good opportunity to have some fun while making a profitable move. Just then, he receives another message from Li Yuhong, once again inviting him for dinner and drinks. Shen Yuan replies casually, asking for the location and playfully adding that Dad will be joining them for some fun tonight. Meanwhile, inside the private Dragon Lounge at Nanjing Restaurant, a group of friends is already gathered. Lin Guangyao, feeling impatient, asks if they are still waiting for someone, mentioning that he's starving. Xie Haijia chimes in, questioning whether all the important people have already arrived. Zhao Zhenggang agrees, stating that the truly important ones never show up late. Li Yuhong, staying calm, tells them not to be impatient and gestures toward the table, where fruits and snacks are available. He reassures them that Shen Yuan will be arriving soon. Lin Guangyao raises an eyebrow at the mention of Shen Yuan, questioning why he was invited. He recalls that Shen Yuan's family had gone bankrupt and considers him no longer part of their circle. Li Yuhong, unfazed by the remark, reminds him that since he is covering the bill tonight, it's not Guangyao's money being spent. He firmly states that Shen Yuan is his lifelong friend, making the situation different. Hearing this, Lin Guangyao backs down, remarking that if Li Xiao wants to wait, then they'll wait. Beside him, a woman playfully complains that he is being difficult, he refuses to be her boyfriend, yet he keeps touching her. Lin Guangyao ignores her, turning to Xie Haijia instead, asking about his cousin's girlfriend. Xie Haijia responds that she's stuck in traffic but should arrive in about 10 minutes. Lin Guangyao leans back, lost in thought. His cousin's family has always relied on his, and if not for him, they wouldn't even have the privilege of attending this gathering. He still can't figure out how his cousin managed to land such an incredible girlfriend. His gaze darkens with lust as he recalls her tight skirt and white blouse, an irresistible office temptation. After all, his cousin and his girlfriend aren't even married yet. A twisted thought crosses his mind, perhaps there's an opportunity for him somewhere. As these thoughts linger, Shen Yuan finally arrives, apologizing for the delay. The moment he steps in, Li Yuhong immediately questions his lateness. Shen Yuan explained that the heavy traffic had delayed him, suspecting that the Didi driver had intentionally taken a detour through the most congested areas. Li Yuhong, annoyed by the situation, felt that some drivers were simply unethical and needed to be reported. Lin Guangyao, observing quietly, found it amusing that Shen Yuan had arrived by taxi while everyone else had come in their luxury cars. It was no surprise that he had gotten stuck in traffic. With a hint of sarcasm, he noted how fortunate Shen Yuan was to have a personal driver while the rest had their own cars. Just then, Chen Na entered, apologizing for her delay due to rush hour traffic. Xie Haijia took the opportunity to introduce her, mentioning that she worked as a sales representative at the 45 dealership. He subtly directed the information toward Lin Guangyao, suggesting that if anyone needed to buy a car, she was the right person to contact. As he spoke, a sense of pride filled him. He might not have the most money among the group, but in his mind, his girlfriend was undoubtedly the most beautiful. Chen Na immediately recognized Shen Yuan as the customer who had picked up his car the previous day. Noticing that he didn't acknowledge her, she decided to act as if this was their first meeting. 40 minutes later, Li Yuhong gathered everyone's attention, announcing his plan to upgrade the bar he was setting up. He explained that since they were all close friends, he wanted to offer them an opportunity to invest and grow the business together. The estimated cost was 2.4 million yuan, and he was willing to give up 30% of the shares, requiring an investment of around 700,000 yuan. With a hint of hesitation, he asked for their thoughts. However, the room remained silent, with everyone avoiding his words. Lin Guangyao, observing the situation, found it odd. He knew that Li Yuhong's family made tens of millions a year. If he was looking for investors, it likely meant that his previous ventures had failed, and his father had stopped financially supporting him. Xie Haijia quickly dismissed the idea of investing. Raising 700,000 yuan would take him at least 2 years of saving, making it impossible for him to participate. Zhao Zhenggang felt that the gathering was meant for food and relaxation, not for business proposals. This kind of request didn't align with Li Yuhong's usual approach. Another friend silently decided that speaking up now would be foolish. In situations like this, staying quiet was the best option. Left standing alone, Li Yuhong glanced around the room, his expression growing heavy. He recalled how these same people never hesitated to take advantage of him when it came to food and drinks. He had always been the one footing the bill. And whenever they needed money, they never hesitated to ask him for help. Yet, now that Shen Yuan was facing difficulties, they all pretended as if they hadn't heard a word. Looking down with a sad expression, he finally broke the silence, questioning why everyone had gone quiet after dinner. All he wanted was for someone, anyone, to respond. Lin Guangyao quickly responded, suggesting that there was no real need for investments at this stage. If Li Yuhong was only facing a temporary liquidity issue, they could all contribute a few thousand yuan to help him open the bar. Later, once the business made money, he could pay them back. Xie Haijia immediately supported the idea, emphasizing that becoming partners halfway wouldn't be fair to Li Yuhong. By simply lending him money instead, he wouldn't have to share his profits, ensuring he didn't lose out. He looked around, trying to get everyone to agree. Meanwhile, Zhao Zhenggang remained skeptical, recalling Li Yuhong's past investments. His hot pot restaurant and KTV lounge had both been financial disasters. Now, he wanted to open a chill bar, which seemed no different from throwing money away. Another friend silently reasoned that if anyone had extra cash, they should lend it privately instead of dragging the whole group into this. Yet another friend felt frustrated, thinking about their own financial situations. Most of them still depended on their families and barely had enough pocket money to spare. Li Yuhong felt a wave of disappointment wash over him. His goal had been to partner with his friends, build a business, and make money together. However, the conversation had quickly shifted from investment opportunities to mere borrowing, which completely defeated the purpose. Realizing he had overestimated these so-called brothers, he grew particularly frustrated with Lin Guangyao. Instead of supporting the idea of partnership, Lin had twisted the discussion into a matter of lending money, avoiding any real commitment. Setting his wine glass down, Li Yuhong made it clear that borrowing was a completely different matter. If no one was genuinely interested in becoming a business partner, then there was no point in continuing the discussion. Lin Guangyao quickly dismissed the matter, insisting that there was no need for serious talks about investments and partnerships. Instead, he encouraged everyone to focus on eating, drinking, and enjoying the night. Shen Yuan had witnessed their true nature ever since his family went bankrupt. He couldn't understand why Li Yuhong still held onto the hope that these so-called brothers would ever change. They were nothing more than parasites, living off their family's wealth without any real ambition of their own. As Li Yuhong turned to leave, tired of the pointless conversation, Shen Yuan's voice cut through the room. He proposed an alternative: if no one else wanted to invest, he would put in the 700,000 yuan himself. Li Yuhong stopped in his tracks, shock flashing across his face as he turned back to look at Shen Yuan. Meanwhile, Lin Guangyao scoffed, dismissing the idea outright. He had known Shen Yuan for years, there was no way he could afford such an investment. Others quickly joined in, ridiculing the suggestion. One laughed at the idea of showing off without substance, while another sneered, suggesting that Shen Yuan should splash some cold water on his face and come back to his senses. To them, it was nothing more than nonsense, and they assumed Li Yuhong isn't in the mood to put up with his nonsense. Xie Haijia, feeling superior due to his age and experience, tried to lecture Shen Yuan about knowing his limits. In his view, life wasn't just about acting bold, it was about understanding one's own capabilities and avoiding empty talk. Lin Guangyao joined in, reminding Shen Yuan of his current situation. Mockingly, he even offered to cover Shen Yuan's taxi fare, emphasizing how out of place he was in this conversation. Meanwhile, Chen Na, having witnessed Shen Yuan's actions firsthand, found their skepticism strange. Just the day before, he had purchased a car worth 600,000 yuan without hesitation. Wasn't it logical for someone with that level of financial freedom to consider investing? Yet, everyone here seemed to treat his offer as a joke. She hesitated, torn between speaking up for Shen Yuan and staying out of it. As an outsider, she wondered if it would be inappropriate to suddenly step in and defend him. But seeing the situation unfold, she couldn't help but question, what should she do? Shen Yuan, unfazed by the ridicule, simply stated that he had already transferred the 700,000 yuan and told Li Yuhong to check his account. As he spoke, Li Yuhong's phone vibrated with a notification. Glancing at the screen, his eyes widened in shock as he read the message from the Industrial and Commercial Bank confirming the deposit of 700,000 yuan. Hearing the reaction, Lin Guangyao, still skeptical, asked if something had happened. Li Yuhong, unable to process the situation himself, told him to see for himself. As Lin Guangyao leaned in to check, his expression quickly shifted from doubt to disbelief. His mind raced as he counted the zeros one by one, struggling to accept the reality in front of him. 700,000 yuan, no tricks, no exaggeration. It was real. Meanwhile, Chen Na, observing the unexpected turn of events, glanced at Shen Yuan with curiosity. Just moments ago, he had been the subject of mockery, yet now the entire situation had flipped. What exactly was his background? Had the balance of power in the room shifted in an instant? As the tension in the room thickened, one of the friends, unable to contain his curiosity, asked what the message said. Lin Guangyao, his face stiff, abruptly announced that he had urgent matters at home and couldn't stay any longer, quickly making an excuse to leave. Xie Haijia, confused by his cousin's sudden retreat, questioned him about the situation. Lin Guangyao, unwilling to explain, simply told him to leave as well, fabricating a reason that their uncle and aunt were looking for him. However, Xie Haijia, still puzzled, pointed out that he hadn't received any calls. Grinding his teeth, Lin Guangyao suppressed his frustration as he glanced toward Shen Yuan. His cousin might have been oblivious, but he himself saw the shift in the atmosphere clearly. Shen Yuan, the one they had mocked just moments ago, had now become the center of attention. It infuriated him. If Shen Yuan had so much money, why had he arrived in a deity? Was this his way of showing off? He had completely stolen the spotlight tonight. Meanwhile, Zhao Zhenggang, still fixated on Li Yuhong's phone, noticed how drastically Lin Guangyao's attitude had changed. Suspicious, he inquired about the message, asking if he could take a look. Zhao Zhenggang had things to do at home and decided to leave first. Another friend followed, bidding farewell to Li Xiao. Zhao Zhenggang was the first to exit, followed by another friend, and soon the rest followed suit, leaving with similar justifications. Xie Haijia, now confused and left behind, questioned why everyone was leaving so suddenly. Chen Na, standing beside him, casually mentioned that they were leaving too, prompting Xie Haijia to demand an explanation. He couldn't understand how she knew the others had been checking transfer records when she hadn't even seen the message herself. In response, Chen Na revealed that Shen Yuan had purchased a mister the day before and paid in full with cash. Shocked by the revelation, Xie Haijia asked if it was true. Chen Na affirmed it, explaining that she even had the purchase contract saved on her phone as proof. Still in disbelief, Xie Haijia remarked that if she had known Shen Yuan was wealthy, she should have told him earlier. While clarifying that he wasn't criticizing her, he pointed out that her lack of information had put him at a disadvantage. He added that next time, she should share such details sooner. As Chen Na walked out, she turned back with a look of disappointment and firmly stated that there would be no next time. She expressed her regret in realizing what kind of person Xie Haijia truly was and lamented her bad luck in being involved with him. Without another word, she ended their association, making it clear that they should never contact each other again. Back inside the room, Li Yuhong let out a sigh and remarked that if he had known Shen Yuan was wealthy, he wouldn't have bothered organizing the gathering. He felt it was a complete waste of money. Shen Yuan, unfazed, pointed out that now Li Yuhong had confirmation that their so-called friends were unreliable. While they might be good for casual fun, they were not people he could depend on when it truly mattered. Shifting the conversation, Shen Yuan expressed his interest in the bar investment. Despite being a minority shareholder, he wanted to be actively involved in the planning. Li Yuhong, seeing his enthusiasm, agreed and began explaining his vision for the bar. For the next 30 minutes, Shen Yuan and Li Yuhong engaged in a detailed discussion about the bar's decor style and operational strategies. Li Yuhong, impressed by Shen Yuan's insights, acknowledged his keen business sense and remarked that he hadn't wasted his time in college. Shen Yuan, with confidence, referred to it as commercial talent but pointed out that neither of them had the time to manage the bar daily. Finding a capable manager was their next priority. Li Yuhong, trusting Shen Yuan's judgment, agreed without hesitation. An hour later, Shen Yuan received a message from Chen Na, informing him that the car he had reserved was about to arrive at the store. She mentioned that he could come on Friday to pay the balance and pick it up. Shen Yuan responded casually, assuring her there was no rush. Instead, he asked if she was free the next night, as he had some specific questions about the car that he wanted to discuss in person. Chen Na, upon receiving the message, found herself momentarily puzzled. She wondered what exactly Shen Yuan was up to. Shen Yuan reflected on his current situation, realizing that Manhwa was his only source of continuous refunds, and the system's benefits had their limits. To fully capitalize on his advantage, he needed to expand his opportunities. Without hesitation, he messaged Chen Na, setting up a meeting at the restaurant on the 4th floor of the mall for the next day. He considered the meeting an investment, not just for business but also for pleasure. Chen Na was undeniably attractive, with a stunning figure that made spending money on her feel far from wasteful. The next day, at the restaurant, Chen Na sat by the window, her presence drawing attention. Her beauty, accentuated by her curvy figure, made her stand out effortlessly. As she waited, she glanced at the time, wondering if she had arrived too early since Shen Yuan was nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, Zheng Shanyong, the general manager of the 4S dealership, happened to pass by and noticed Chen Na sitting alone. Seeing her in the store uniform outside of work piqued his curiosity. Within the dealership, he had never found the right moment to approach and flirt with her, but now, seeing her outside the workplace, he felt that this was his chance. Zheng Shanyong, the general manager, instructed his colleagues to find somewhere else to eat, stating that he had other matters to attend to. Without questioning him, one of the subordinates acknowledged his words and led the group away, leaving Zheng behind. As they walked off, the first subordinate speculated about Chen Na, wondering if she would agree to Zheng Shanyong's advances. The second subordinate, however, dismissed the idea, believing that Chen Na wasn't the type to entertain such things. Their conversation continued as they debated her intentions. The first subordinate suggested that no woman would come to eat alone without a reason, implying that Chen Na might have arranged a casual meeting on purpose, possibly to be noticed by Zheng Shanyong. The second subordinate questioned what they meant, to which the first replied that perhaps she had deliberately orchestrated the encounter. The second subordinate, still unconvinced, hesitated but admitted that the possibility was intriguing. Xie Haijia happened to pass by at that moment and overheard their conversation. The mention of Chen Na setting up a casual meeting immediately caught his attention, leaving him wondering, who was she meeting with? Zheng Shanyong, the general manager, approached Chen Na with a seemingly casual smile, commenting on the coincidence of them both being at the restaurant. He inquired if she was alone and offered to join her. Chen Na, maintaining her composure, politely declined, stating that she was already meeting a friend. However, Zheng Shanyong was not deterred. He viewed her refusal as a mere act of playing hard to get. Ignoring her response, he pressed further, reminding her that as her superior, there was no issue with them sharing a meal. Chen Na, clearly displeased, firmly rejected his approach, emphasizing that he had a family and should maintain proper boundaries. Yet, instead of backing off, Zhang Shanyong casually dismissed her concern, stating that if his marital status was the issue, he could easily get a divorce. Meanwhile, Xie Haijia, who had rushed to the scene, witnessed their interaction and was filled with frustration. His mind raced with thoughts. Had Chen Na rejected him only to pursue another man? He felt underestimated. He made a good salary, earning between 400,000 and 500,000 a year, and even owned a car worth over 300,000. In what way was he inferior? As he watched them talking, his frustration turned into anger. Seeing Zhang Shanyong confidently engaging with Chen Na, Xie Haijia clenched his fists, feeling as though he had lost to someone like that pig. Xie Haijia, filled with rage, lashed out, accusing Chen Na and Zhang Shanyong of having an affair behind his back. His voice echoed through the restaurant, drawing the attention of onlookers. Chen Na, taken aback by the sudden outburst, questioned his accusation, but before she could fully respond, Zhang Shanyong, clearly confused, asked who Xie Haijia even was. Without hesitation, Xie Haijia threw a punch at Zhang Shanyong, demanding to know his identity. Caught off guard, Zhang Shanyong staggered back but quickly retaliated, furious that someone dared to attack him. A full-blown fight broke out between the two, with punches flying as they struggled for dominance, both seemingly determined to prove their claim over Chen Na. At that moment, Shen Yuan arrived at the scene. Observing the chaos, he immediately recognized Xie Haijia. His mind processed the situation, Xie Haijia in a heated brawl with a man who appeared to be Chen Na's superior. It was a spectacle that screamed of jealousy and misunderstanding. Chen Na, shaken, rose from her seat and took a few steps back, distancing herself from the commotion. Shen Yuan silently assessed the situation. The way things were unfolding, it seemed like an infidelity scandal had erupted in public. He smirked to himself, thinking that if it weren't for the fact that the overweight man had taken the fall first, he might have been the one lying on the floor instead. Shen Yuan quickly reached for Chen Na's hand, his touch firm yet reassuring. The unexpected contact made her blush, her face turning red as warmth spread through her cheeks. With a calm and steady voice, Shen Yuan told her to ignore the commotion and leave with him. Without hesitation, they exited the scene, getting into his car and driving away from the chaos. As they drove, Chen Na broke the silence, explaining that her relationship with Xie Haijia had only lasted 2 weeks. It was during that dinner gathering that she had realized his true nature, and thankfully, she had cut ties with him that very night. Shen Yuan acknowledged her words, agreeing that discovering someone's true character early was a blessing in disguise. He reassured her that now that it was over, there was nothing more to worry about. However, Chen Na shook her head, her expression troubled. The issue wasn't entirely over. Zhang Shanyong, the man who had been attacked, was her boss. Now that he had been publicly humiliated and beaten without reason, she feared how he might retaliate against her at work. Shen Yuan remained unfazed, his tone firm as he advised her that a boss like that wasn't worth working for. Without hesitation, he suggested that she consider finding a better job, one where she would be treated with the respect she deserved. Chen Na sighed, her expression heavy with uncertainty. Finding another job wasn't as simple as it sounded. If she changed stores, she would have to start from scratch, losing all the loyal customers she had built over the years. The thought of starting over was daunting. She admitted that working in sales for so long had become exhausting. Deep down, she wanted to leave the industry altogether and pursue something more fulfilling. Her dream was to open a small cafe, one where she could set her own hours, staying open longer when she felt like it and closing early when she needed a break. The idea of such freedom felt wonderful. However, reality weighed down on her dreams. Opening a cafe required an investment of at least 300,000 to 400,000 yuan, and she had no idea when she would be able to save up that much money. Shen Yuan listened quietly before offering a solution. If she truly wanted to open a cafe, a lack of funds shouldn't stop her. What if someone was willing to invest in her dream? As he spoke, a thought crossed his mind. Aside from the 700,000 yuan he had just invested with Li Yuhong, he still had an exclusive investment fund of 300,000 yuan. Perhaps this could be the perfect opportunity to put it to use. Chen Na, without hesitation, declared that she would resign immediately. She had spoken casually, not expecting him to take her seriously. However, with a serious expression, Shen Yuan responded that she should resign the next day, as he planned to invest 300,000 yuan to open a cafe where she could work for him. As she was about to instinctively place a hand on his thigh, she stopped, startled by his sudden proposal, looking at him in surprise. At that moment, a system notification appeared. Chen Na's affinity level toward Shen Yuan had risen to 64. Meanwhile, Shen Yuan couldn't help but feel satisfied. He had been slightly concerned about whether he could gain her trust and support along the way, but now, things were progressing even better than expected. A new opportunity had presented itself, a potential investment and, more importantly, another valuable connection. For further recaps, subscribe the channel.